Hello, folks. I am doing an impromptu Ask Me Anything. I won't start talking about anything serious. I'll give everybody a bit of time to join me. The reason for doing this is I have had a case of the gremlins today. It happens, unfortunately, with live streaming. This show this morning, it ended up being an issue that could have been avoided, but hey, it didn't. Anyway. And the one this evening, my guest, Stephen Ossad, all the tests worked, and he's got a Wi-Fi connectivity issue, so it just doesn't it doesn't work. He got in for about 2 seconds. I couldn't hear him. Video was all over the place, jerking all over the place. There was a delay of about 10 seconds, and then the signal failed completely. So we will simply reschedule it for a later date. And when that later date will be, I don't know. So I'm going to call it an Ask Me Anything, but Woody's Ramble. So as you know, I have been away for 2 weeks and then started live streaming again yesterday. And where I was in Croatia and Bosnia, and we were combining a family trip, our first family trip in I don't know how long, and also quite a pilgrimage. So my French family will not mind me saying this, but Thierry, my brother-in-law, who a few of you know because he's also a chauffeur driver in Normandy, was in the French Foreign Legion, and previously he was in a French Marine Commando, and he was in Bosnia in 1993 and 1996. And is something that was very important to him. He felt very aggrieved by the United Nations policy, and we're not going to go into what United Nations were getting up to in Bosnia, but I have accompanied World War II veterans to the battlefields of Normandy and the Ardennes and things like that. And this time it was accompanying a family member, someone in his late 50s, back to Bosnia, where he was 27, whatever it was, 28 years ago. And it's all, of course, about Thierry, and I will maybe be doing something about it at some point in the future with Thierry. I don't know. But I have to say, going to Bosnia was a profound experience for me, as it was for Mag, because, as you know, if you follow me on Twitter and these live streams, is that, when I see spang, as we have called it, me, Colin, and the other professors of spangology, so bullet holes, shell damage on a wall in Normandy or a church in Normandy, we find something, a new bit of damage. I think it's kind of okay, nearly 80 years on, to kind of get excited by that and think it's kind of cool. But when you're in somewhere like Sarajevo, as we were for a few days, or seeing when you say bullet holes, I mean entire fronts of 30-story apartments just absolutely plastered with bullet holes. And of course, as you look at it, you're thinking, oh my God, bullet holes. And part of me is thinking taking photos. And I did say take some photos, but I did it with a kind of sensitivity, because the person who was affected by that bullet holes, who may have seen their husband, their daughter, their partner, child die in Sarajevo, maybe have been walking past that very building at the moment I was taking a photo. So it was a complete reminder that war is real. And I went straight from that, well, via another couple of days in Croatia, straight from that, flew to Luton, where Stuart Bertie, who may have or may not have joined this live stream, who's the incredible photographer and friend, did the photos at the We Have Ways Festival, picked me up and took me to the We Have Ways Festival. And as you know, I love We Have Ways. I love James Holland, Al Murray, what they do with the podcasts. It was an incredible extravaganza of sights, sounds, and experiences, listening to the lectures by Peter Caddick Adams and Mark Milner and Alexandra Ritchie and other people like that, and a field full of tanks, 2 T-34s. There was a Centaur done up in the markings of Cromwell. There was Morris commercial trucks. There was half tracks. The Monty's men were strutting their stuff on the battlefield, recreating kind of the assault on Hill 112. But it's a celebration almost of the study of World War II. And so tonally, it was a bit weird for me to go to a battlefield that was just 28 years old, to a place where World War II is kind of venerated, and it's the people wearing T-shirts with tanks on. I have no problem with that. It was just a bit of a weird tonal shift. So that was something that had a big, profound effect on that. And so Stephen Ossad will come back at some point in the future. We will just arrange it at a convenient point. And he wrote what I think is probably the best book I have read on General Bradley. This is it, Omar Nelson Bradley, America's GI General. And we were going to talk about his involvement in Operation Cobra. So I'm not going to go and do that again. And we'll just wait till Stephen comes back on again. So I'll just do some questions really, but I'm kind of spitballing this because I had no idea I was going to do this. So I'll just scroll back and have a look at some of the questions. So oh, and yeah, Darren Little, you're absolutely right. The Balkans needs more exposure. And I was talking to, I think it was Sol David at the weekend. And forgive me, folks, for doing lots of name dropping. Anybody, there were just so many historians this weekend who I was chatting to, but I think it was Sol David. It may have been Giles Milton. I said, why is there not a good book about Yugoslavia in World War II? Whoever it was said, because it's bloody complicated. And I would echo that. I mean, it was complicated, the 90s, and, you've got to include the long term past the Balkans. I've just read a book about the siege of Sarajevo, and it takes you back to the 1600s and builds up all these local tensions and religions and factions and politics and Austro-Hungarian Empire and all this kind of stuff there. And then that all bubbled away after the First World War. Of course, the Archduke got assassinated, and there's the 20s is an extraordinarily complicated period, 30s, and then the World War II happened, and even the British government weren't sure, if you know the story, who to align their support of. And Tito ended up becoming the main candidate with the communists, but there were other factions there, and some of them kind of changed sides as the war went on, although that's a very simple way of saying it. Then the 90s is a re-emergence of the whole thing there. So the Balkans is just, it's like a, all the twists and turns of a Tom Clancy, Frederick Forsyth novel with the Night M. Shyamalan kind of twist ending to the movie. It's just so complicated theatre. But when I was standing, and I will get to some more questions, I told you it'd be a bit of a ramble. So I was standing sometime about 10 days ago in Jablanica, which is on the Neretva River. And you're talking about an engagement that I think was part of the German fourth offensive. It may have been the third. My brain is a bit of a sieve. But the Germans did these multiple offensives, I think it was 7 in total, to eliminate the resistance in Yugoslavia. And this one was like 120,000 Germans pushing 30,000 of Tito's partisans, including other factions, back to this river. There's a bridge there. If you saw me ramble about it on Twitter, there's a movie made in 1969 with Yul Brynner and Orson Welles and Hardy Kruger, Kurt Jürgens, Franco Nero, about it, called The Battle of Neretva, which is a film I saw when I was skiving off school, pretending to my mum I was sick when I was about 14 years old. I'd never heard. I knew all the big films like Guns and Navarone and Dirty Dozen when I was 14. I was like, how the hell have I never heard of a movie that starred Yul Brynner and what have you? And so I watched it, and it was just kind of amazing. To be standing at this site that, frankly, most people don't know about, and most people don't know about a lot. That's what I've realized doing this channel, is most of us, myself included, don't know. We know less about World War II than we know about World War II. I'll explain what I mean. Is we think we know about it. We know about areas that we've read about and that are familiar to our cultures. If you're Australian watching this, you're very aware of Kokoda. If you're American, you're very aware of Iwo Jima, Normandy, Canadian, High Brad, and others from there, David Patterson. You're very aware of Dieppe and the Scheldt Estuary. And if you're from Sarajevo, for example, watching this, if you were watching it, welcome. You are aware of what happened there. But we're not, all of us, none of us, are fully aware of the whole of World War II, and you'd have to live to be 1,000 years old to get anywhere close to understand the whole of World War II. So that Balkans experience was really interesting. And so was We Have Ways. And I have to say, because obviously Jim and Al won't be doing a live stream, probably one of the most incredible moments of my life, of an emotional response to something, was when on the Friday, I think it was, when Peter Caddick Adams, and we all know Peter Caddick Adams has been on my show, I think 4 times now, maybe 5. He had a major health worry in June and was in hospital in Paris, quadruple heart bypass. And he's still not fully recovered, but because he's Peter, he's back out doing stuff. And he walked down from the back of this tent. They brought him in a K2 ambulance, a World War II ambulance. He walked down amongst, I think, about 600 people watching him, something like that. And the standing ovation for Peter Caddick Adams as he walked in there was, I can only imagine what it'd be like for, and this is not belittling him as a status of someone recovering from a health scare, to the Beatles at Shea Stadium, or Elvis on, the 1968 reunion, or going out to an FA Cup final, or the Olympic 100 meters final. It was absolutely, to see the outpouring of emotion for Peter Caddick Adams was just incredible. And I would be lying if I said I didn't have a tear in my eye. And I'd spent 2 or 3 hours with Peter that morning because we were waiting for our minibus to take us from the hotel to the event, and we had a big chat. And Waitman Bjorn was there as well, and Peter had some low moments, and seeing him treated like, frankly, a rock star was just an amazing event. And Peter Caddick Adams is just such a sweetheart of a gentleman, and his books are great, even the big, huge, thick ones. And yes, being his friend is an honor I will never take for granted, as with all these other guys there. So I am rambling, and so I will just go back and have a look at some questions there. I've obviously missed some. So let's go back to where I go right back to the beginning. So just ignore me. Take a minute while I'm going back and having a look at these questions. So where have we had it there? Gremlins. And this is what I wish I had a producer who could bring things up for me. So Stuart is asking, I was wondering if he thought that a fiasco, the preliminary bombardment from Cobra, was symbolic of a personal failure of General Bradley. Well, that's a really good question. Probably the kind of thing I would have asked him, phrased possibly slightly differently, about Bradley. And I'm realizing I'm getting more and more into Cobra as I go along. And Cobra is something that, like Market Garden in ways, every historian interprets it slightly differently. And part of that is because of the uncertainty of exactly who said to what, and the bombing thing we came up yesterday in the show about McNair, is that there's gaps in our knowledge base of exactly who said what to whom. A bit like the pre-Goodwood, which was 7 days early or something. There's still some debate over who said what, and Dempsey and all these other people said. So that would have been a great question to ask, Steve, and we will do it when we come back for whenever we will schedule that. So Mark is asking, do you think the resupply question? So I think we'll kind of we'll skip the Cobra questions and the ones appropriate to ask to Steve, because Steve is the expert. I have opinions on Bradley, but it would be not pointless. But we'll do that exercise when Steve is here to answer questions. We can discuss it on Friday when Kevin Hemel is on, talking about Middleton's push down the western side of the Cherbourg Peninsula, which for my money I think is one of the most outstanding bits of use of armor, certainly the Normandy campaign. So Mark is asking, do you think the resupply operation for D-Day is somewhat overlooked, with each soldier carrying around 2 other rounds and 2 days through? The resupply operation was immense, in my opinion. Big question. Lots of answers to it. I don't, overlooked by some people, but not overlooked by others. I do think when you look at the British, for example, they could have given the guys a bit more ammo, because there was always plans to bring in, should the first waves work well, more, the Army Catering Corps coming in. I don't know necessarily that the Salt Wave needed 2 24-hour ration packs. I mean, I think they could have fought on a bit longer without food and maybe a bit more ammo. When you think of the 3rd Division pushing inland towards Hillman and things like that, maybe they would have required the ammo and radio batteries more than they would required the ability to brew cups of tea. But resupply generally is something that needs to be considered and added, and which brings us to the Navy. And it was a privilege. I'm doing it again, folks, name dropping, to talk to Stephen Fisher, who is an amazing guy. He's got a little bit of, if you know Sean Claxton's dryness when he talks on Twitter, which I think is to his credit. He's got a sort of sense of humor. But Steve is working on the Sword Beach book, and then he wants to do a Gold and Juno Beach book. And those who know him encourage him to do an Omaha and a Utah Beach, because his analysis is forensic, and his ability to deliver is really good. He read an account of his proposed Sword Beach book, all about LCTs. It was just riveting, great use of language. And when he gets into all this details of the shipping and things, we'll realize just what work was done into that. So I think, to answer your question, Mark, resupply is interesting. What came up in the discussion with McNair yesterday, and it came up in a discussion I was having with John McManus at the weekend, name dropping again, sorry about that, it's literally the week I've just had, is that there was a big problem in Normandy, which I think I hadn't really quite realized, with artillery ammunition in the US Army not getting to the guys that needed it. It was a discussion with Mark Milner, name dropping again, the Canadian historian who started working on the Battle of Lafayette, interestingly, and talking about the 90th Division on June 8th and 9th and 10th, having plenty of artillery pieces, but no ammunition for them. So you think, well, that's a bit odd, given the enormity of the 800 plus ships off Utah Beach, that someone isn't getting enough artillery shells in. But there's So the logistics side of things is definitely something that needs more work and needs more assessment, as does the Normandy campaign in general. And we still, after 78 years, do not have a definitive book to offer about the Battle of Normandy. There's lots of good ones and lots of fairly good ones, and lots of ones are very, very good on a specific aspect of it. But a single volume that covers everything, and a logistics book about Normandy would be really good. So I hope, yeah, the Norman, to just go bring your question back again, Mark, the resupply operation was enormous, and also considering it was done without computers. I mean, I think that's one of the things Stephen Fisher is looking at, is that the complexity of moving all those ships and those landing craft and those supply vessels from numerous ports across the channel, and a channel that was still being cleared of mines outside of the invasion zone, and who was getting what to where, and then the distribution of it in Normandy in a beachhead that hadn't reached the size it was supposed to, I think was amazing. Thinking of Mervyn Kirsch, the veteran who was involved in REME and resupply and re-equipping of vehicles, and just these vehicle parks, light vehicle parks just inland from Gold Beach, and just how extraordinarily complex these operations were, and how, you know, you have to know what's in the, you know, you're unloading supplies from a truck, and you've got to know what's in the box and where that contents of that box are going, and who at the front is needing a certain thing, and that information getting back, and the right thing getting front. It's a complex, incredibly detailed question. So we'll play a few more things through a few more things. Steve, when I was at the festival, I had a great time. I found the artillery displays actually valuable because they were useful reminder that the war is really violent and horrible. Yes, and then also on a more, that's a very good emotional response. On a very simple response to that, just how important artillery was in winning the war. I think, you know, how many war films can we think of that really have artillery in them? You know, have massed barrages, have, you know, there's the bit in Dirty Dozen, just the weird one to think of, where they use actually British 25 pounders during the training exercise when they're coming down the hill there, but it's kind of used for a comedy moment. Battle of the Bulge, I know, 1965, the awful move, that has an artillery barrage, but I mean, how many times is the use of artillery really addressed in war movies? How many times do we really consider artillery? I mean, when you think about the operations south of Caen, operations Totalize and Tractable, and the amount of artillery shells being lobbed on that battlefield there, well, Cobra as well, beyond the air bombardment, the artillery being used. I mean, the hundreds, thousands of barrels, and that was fantastic. So yeah, that artillery is very violent, very terrible, very effective though, and probably won the war for us. Many things won the war for us, but artillery absolutely was a huge contributing fact. Woody Lee, so Woody to Woody, heading to Normandy next spring. Besides the normal tourist spots, what is your can't miss list of place to visit, or 2-day visit? Well, 2 days isn't very long. But 2 days, you've got to be selective. I'm going to say this again. I've said this before. I like to think that what tourists should start doing is following the routes of units rather than going across the beach. I said this on Jim and Al's podcast. Is your average tourist, and I used to do this myself, gets off on the ferry or whatever, and they trundle on the coast. They go along Sword and Juno and Gold, or they go Utah. Of course, that's not the way the armies were going. The armies were landing on the beach and going inland. So I think, despite the fact you will miss a lot of things, wherever you spend your 2 days, Woody Lee, start on one place and maybe move inland following that army's trajectory. So if, for example, you wanted to start on Omaha Beach, and Omaha Beach is an interesting place to go, then follow 5th Corps towards San Lo, and perhaps on towards Villa, or 7th Corps or 7th or 8th Corps US Corps in Utah Beach, and follow them off across the peninsula and down towards Avranches. Or if you're British, follow the 3rd Division inland from Saw Beach, and then perhaps across and cover Goodwood, that kind of thing. I think seeing the 3 parts of a movie trilogy, so that would be the trilogy being invasion, attrition, and breakout. If we divide the Normandy into those 3 chapters, seeing those 3 movies is ultimately more rewarding than keep seeing the invasion bit, which is what the majority of tourists did, and what the majority of tour guides, myself included, used to offer and still kind of do, is just that going along the June the 6th stuff. So think about what the army that you're interested in was doing. Think about starting where they landed and moving to where they ended up. I think that would be a very good use of 2 days. Keep on going down there. Stuart, you're asking about Cobra again, and really interesting. And I think those questions will be better directed to Steve Ossad, or indeed to Kevin Hemel. Big questions and interesting, and the fact we're talking about these things like Cobra and Totalize is really cool. So but yeah, let's not try and bite off too much we can do in this show. Magali is saying about a special about Bosnia. We should do that. I took a lot of video footage at this museum at Neretva, where this bridge was, where this river was, where the resistance, and I will put together something. I'm still trying to find a historian who can actually come on and be an expert on the battles in Bosnia, or the various countries as they were at the time on the Croatian borders. I haven't actually found one yet. I may do something myself, but I will be covering at some point the war in the Balkans with the footage I took. And I took footage. Another amazing thing I did that was both amazing and also incredibly upsetting is I and Mag and Pierre, the young guy who is my second stepdaughter's boyfriend, went to a partisan cemetery just on the outskirts of Mostar, so again in the Balkans. And this is 700 graves. I'm going off on a tangent. 700 graves of people who died from 41 to 43. Mostly Tito's communists, but when you look at the names, they included people. They were Bosnian Muslims, there were Bosnian Catholics, Bosnian Orthodox. There were people from Croatia, all sorts of people. And just in June this year, so a month to the day before the day we went there, this cemetery, which is just on the outskirts of Mostar, kind of beginning to becoming a thriving tourist spot, had been vandalized. Now, I don't mean some like one guy going in there and spraying a picture of, a Homer Simpson or tagging. I talk about a systematic destruction of over 700 gravestones, smashed. And we were thinking, how many people must have been involved in that? How many people? I mean, it's dozens, surely. And what about the and Nazi swastikas painted by spray paint around the cemetery, and heartbreaking. Whatever your political allegiance is, whatever today in the Balkans, whoever you support, whatever your background is, 700 plus people from that area who died resisting the German occupation, who, wherever your loyalty within the Balkans, were the true evil ones, and all smashed up. So that was really amazing. So so History Explorer is saying, I do find it strange when people pose with weapons from World War II and equipment. When you ask how people would feel if you were posed with weapons from recent conflicts, that is bringing up, of course, the whole question of living history and reenactment. And my simple response to that, it's all context, all about context. It's all about posing with is a loaded phrase. I think what Monty's men did when they were doing that support with the Sherman tanks and 25-pounders firing, kind of, you can't recreate the Battle of Hill 112 in a field in were we in Bedfordshire, I suppose, or whatever county we're in, but it gave the effect. It gave some kind of illusion of understanding what it was like. I think that's not posing with, but yes, kind of a reenactor kind of grinning whilst holding up a machine gun. It's all about context. It's all about what you're doing it for. And but at the same time, if you're a 10-year-old boy or girl and it's wearing a Tommy helmet and picking up a rifle is the thing that kind of sparks your interest in that era, I don't think I see anything really bad with it. But it's complicated. Michaela is asking about how to contact me. ddayhistorian.com is my website. Magali's website, ddayforyou.com. Collins is objectiveDday.com. Any one of those will give you various tours. There are links on my main website, from my World War II TV website to my guiding website. I don't do as much guiding as I used to, but I can put you in touch with people who do. There was a drama about the Bosnian War. It was Damien Lewis's first role. Wayne Higgins there. The Warriors, wasn't it called Warriors? Wasn't Damien Lewis in it? It was about the United Nations. I remember white armored cars and stuff. Been a long time since I saw it. Benjamin, I found pretty much every book I could find on the Balkans. I think I bought 6 or 7. None of which was written within the last 15 years, and two of which are written just after World War II. So old standard. A couple of them are very niche. One was simply about Serbian atrocities, atrocities in Serbia. So quite niche. They were all okay. None I found really kind of transported me back there and tied it all up and made it understandable. But I'm kind of glad I read them. But the Balkans needs a thorough modern appraisal, but I'm not the one to do it, and I don't know who will. Churchill's, it's a good quote, Michael de Paul there. Churchill said that the Balkans produce more history than they can consume. That is very apt, applicable And Ivan Sorda, yeah, we can't discount old Force 10 from Navarone. First introduced me, as it did me, Ivan introduced me to Tito and the Chetniks and partisans, and you're right, Edward Fox is what is the really important redeeming feature of that film. It would be okay, mediocre, but Edward Fox just about elevates it to being good is maybe a strong word, but fair to middling film. It's a guilty pleasure. I quite like it as a film. Keep going, Woody. This is an important subject, and there's a lot of you watching, considering I'm really just rambling. So sometimes I thought I did that the last time I did that. I thought rather than having these guests on, I could just sit here and ramble my incoherent bollocks, and it would seem to get as many views as when I have a professor of history who's written 20 books. I don't know why that is. It's maybe because I don't do these very often. Perhaps that's what it is. I don't know. The History Underground. So hi JD. I visited German World War II cemetery in northern Slovakia when I was there. In that part of Europe, really made me want to dig into what happened in that quarter. Dig into, perhaps an inappropriate choice of phrasing there, my friend JD. When investigate, I think, would have been a better choice. I'm teasing you there, JD, because you would do the same to me. Yeah, no, it's the whole. Well, it's like, is the Balkans the Eastern Front, or is it another bit in between? It's the Balkans, really, isn't it? But I think when we think of the Eastern Front, again, us World War II buffs are here, we really think of Stalingrad and Kursk and Leningrad. We really think about that kind of Russian stuff, though. And then we think Western Front, we really think Normandy and Italy and Belgium and stuff. But there's a whole lot of countries in between those two zones, as we know. The Romania and what's now Slovenia and Slovakia, Czechoslovakia there, and that JD mentioned, and the Balkans, and then you start going down towards Iraq, and then we kind of ignore all that bit. And I say we, I mean us English speakers. I'm sure people who live there are knowledgeable about that. But yeah, there's, again, going back to the point I made, there's whole chunks of World War II we just don't kind of talk about as much. So yeah, and hi to you too, Brad. And I hope your channel is going from strength to strength, and you're over your little blip of feeling negative about it, because you're doing incredible work there, Brad. And I, for one, am one of those people who want you to go on and keep on doing it, because Canadian history needs telling, and you're the one to do it. So just keep on going. And if you don't support Brad, if you're watching this, you don't know who Brad is, there it is. They'll hold on this day in Canadian military history is his channel. He's doing incredible work. Live streams like I do, but also putting together bits of footage. He's doing interviews, he's doing studies, he's doing reaction videos. So Brad, if you haven't subscribed to Brad's channel, just get it done. I don't need to plug History Underground, who just reached 300,000 subscribers. I'm very proud of you, JD. I'm also slightly jealous. Maybe it's the hat. I go for the newsboy, you go for the baseball cap. We both do the beard thing. Maybe it's, I don't know. Maybe, but anyway, whatever you're doing it really well. So keep on going with that. Rob Crane, Floyd force landed Dubrovnik to try and help prevent the Germans from escaping back to Germany. Apparently, Stalin was stunned that Tito invited capitalists into his country. Invited is an interesting choice of word there, but I'm afraid I'm not really familiar, apart from on very passing terms, about Floyd force, so I don't have much to say about that. But I don't have the reaction there. But you're doing a good job at educating us, Woody, uncovering the stories that we hadn't heard about before. Good job. Thank you very much. And I have to say, without sounding any way egotistic, because I had massive bouts of imposter syndrome sitting with people like Peter Gaddick Adams and Sol David and Robert Lyman. Who the hell am I to be sitting here doing it? But same likewise, I was walking around that event and people wanted to have their photo taken with me and saying, thank you very much for what you're doing. And that was really gratifying. Although I would quantify that by saying, it's not really what I'm only a facilitator. I'm the stadium. The guests are the act. Sure, I kind of hold it together, but it's the John McManus's and Damien Lewis's and Peter Gaddick Adams and Jenny Grants and all those people who actually make the shows. I am simply the facilitator. I do my best, but anyway, so keeping on going there. More questions there. I just lost my place in the sidebar there, which too many were talking. Do you have any plans to bring Steve Zaloga back on? Yes. The next show he's going to do, this will be a good, potentially spicy one, but also because he's so authoritative in the way he speaks and the way he builds his case, it will be about the DD tanks on Omaha Beach. I think, well, that's been done before, Woody. It has been done before, but often incorrectly. It's that same old trope that gets done, that all the tanks got lost on Omaha, when it is in fact nearly all the tanks, the DD tanks of one battalion at one end of the beach, where the other battalion's tanks did come ashore, and it neglects to mention the second waves of tanks, including the dozers and the regular Sherman tanks. And Steve will be doing something about that based on an article he wrote about that. So Steve will come on. That probably will be part of my Normandy myth busting series that's coming up. Marty Morgan will be coming up, myth busting the Korean soldier on Omaha or Utah, whichever bit it each is there. That'll be coming up. So Steven Zoga will definitely be coming on again. Did the flip in command, Cobra question, I think this one's quick enough to do. Did the flip in command structure between Bradley and Patton, between Cobra and Overlord, happen due to Patton's bad behavior? Partly. There's as we found out with Mark yesterday, McNair being there was ready to take over of the Fuzag role, and Patton coming to the end of his use of the Fuzag role and finding replacement, because Fuzag, the deception ban, was still working in July, is also part of the command structure and the changes over, because Middleton with 8th Corps is still in command. But if you go to Avranches and see the monument there, which is addressing the August the 1st bit, it's all about Patton. And, we have no problem hearing about General Patton, but it's like Middleton kind of, because he's been assumed by the Third Army there, doesn't get a look in. But that changeover period of command in late July is really interesting. And you've got kind of parallel changes of command in the British sector, because there were some fallings out over Goodwood, and there were some command changes and sackings and things like that. So the late July period is like everybody's kind of reassembling their teams for the second half of the campaign, which in the end, the second half of the Normandy campaign, the breakout, ended up taking a lot less than the first half. So it was not an equal in time, but kind of half in terms of not getting out of Normandy and getting out of Normandy being two halves. The second bit ended up going very fast because of the Falaise Gap and all that. Could you indulge in a bit of hindsight-ism for us? If you could give Allied High Command any piece of advice on D-Day +1, June the 7th, what would it be? Oh, good grief. Oh, God, I wish I had. I put the question up thinking I'll be able to think of something. And now I put it up there. A single piece of advice. Kind of been like you'll get there in the end. Just keep on plugging away. I mean, to kind of come up with any. Yeah, I think that would be it. The advice would be is don't when things aren't going well for you in June, don't take what's happening in front of you at face value, because all of those at the front line, it's come up on previous shows, all those in those, if you're in the 5th Army, American pushing towards Omaha, if you're the British 6th Airborne Division sitting up on the Breville Ridge, if you're Canadian, hi Brad again, sitting there somewhere between Juno and Sword on your way to Caen, it often felt in June like it was an even fight. It often felt like, the Germans were doing these sometimes daring kind of the 12th SS pursuits up towards the beach that weren't going to get anywhere and weren't going to do anything. And the 17th SS pushing up towards Bloody Gulch and things like that. They kind of give this false impression that Germans are kind of maybe going to be able to turn this and do something. But what we know now is that attritional phase is all going badly for the Germans. It's just, they can't replace their vehicles. They can't replace their commanders, and the Allies are slowly but surely building up this massive amount of stuff that they're going to use for the breakout in July. So I kind of would tell people in the command, just kind of endure this phase and don't always think of it negatively. It felt negative, like the Tommies and GIs who were saying, why is there no air power? They didn't see it where they were, but their air power is going in and knocking out railways. Phil Blood, I mentioned railways. That's the Phil Blood bingo card filled up there. Yeah, that maybe would be a single bit of advice. Rob Crane, I don't have a question. I have a thank you. And I was staggered that you're launching back into the great live shows. I'm staggered that I planned it as soon as coming back, if I'm being honest. I was sitting after my 2 hours sleep in a bloody chair on the night ferry Sunday night thinking, why did I set a live stream for Monday evening? But then I got there and I really enjoyed it in the end. So Norma Gray, hi Norma, and I hope you enjoyed the little video we did for you. We were going to do one at Mary's barbecue on Thursday, but we all got it got dark and people had a bit of alcohol, and so we didn't do it. The veterans you've guided, which ones did you find the most memorable? I mean, that's all of them. I mean, that's an easy cop-out question, but you know, spending time with veterans is always really cool. Although I have to say, I was doing a lot of my stuff with veterans in the years when they were younger than they are now, and able to kind of move about and, you know, climb with me over barbed wire fences and go over to where they were and look at things. So that was a tree line where I started. But I mean, memorable in different ways. Some were very humorous, some were memorable because they were very upset half the time you're with them. It's one of the things that I've said, and anyone who's spent time with veterans, Magali is watching this and others, is that when people say, what would the veterans think if they saw this? You know, and then people ask them as if the veterans is like represents a single set of views. Like, you know, you could say, what would people living in a street think about a new park being built nearby? Well, some would want the park there because they're dog walkers, would love a new park. Some have kids who would want a park. Some people wouldn't want a park. They wouldn't want the noise. You can never attribute a set of responses to a single a sample set. So veterans come here, and some have an incredible time here, laughing and carousing and drinking beer, and some have a very difficult time. It's a cathartic experience for them, and they come away kind of not glad they've come, but pleased they took the courage to come, but never really liked it. So time with veterans was back then in the day was rewarding, but it was a very different set of experiences, and everyone had a different types of things. So there you are. Maddie, whoever Maddie is saying, wow, I love this conversation. I'm glad I found your channel, sir. Please don't call me sir. My dad is the sir in the family. I'm just Woody. Humble, don't. History's voice of the barrage and bridge too far. Yes, that's a good. Going back to use of artillery in films. Yes, yes, that's a good point. The artillery barrage and bridge too far is a good use of artillery in film as well. Well remembered there. And Phil Blood came in and said exactly the same thing. So you obviously were in connection there. You had the same idea. Oh, and Benjamin, 3 of you have now said the artillery and bridge too far. You were obviously connected there somehow, you know, telepathically via the result. You all had that same thought. That's interesting stuff. Manny Lopez has read the Green Book's logistics part. Play a very detailed view about the US Army. And there's a second set. Mark Calhoun said that there's a second set of not quite the Green Books that came out, I think, after the Green Books that were all about logistics, which I'll have to kind of look for, see if they're available in PDF. So I don't know that I was aware of this set of logistics books. If it was something I had aware of, I'd forgotten. Richard Severin is saying, what do you think of books written before Ultra Secret was released, like The Bitter Woods and others? Well, it's like anything that was written. This is a historiography question, isn't it, really? I mean, there were books written when information was not available. There were books written when technology wasn't available, when studying aerial photos wasn't available, enlarging maps wasn't available, when communicating with other people wasn't available. So I've never thrown out a book that I had that was written a long time ago by an author I perhaps don't respect anymore, because you understand the progression of where we were in understanding of things and where we are now. So I really liked Max Hastings' Overlord book when I was 14. I read it the first time, and now I don't, but it still sits on the shelf, and I still refer to it sometimes to see what he was saying about things, so I can then compare to perhaps what Ian Kershaw was saying about it 10 years ago. Robert Kershaw possibly is the one I mean. There's so many Kershaws writing, or James Holland was saying, or Peter Caddick Adams, or John McManus, and say, oh, that's what they were thinking then, and this is what they're thinking now. But you can definitely forgive the people for not knowing about Ultra when they wrote books. Another whole subset of stuff is all the people who, this has come up on some World War II TV shows, all those people who wrote books about being spies and agents who were writing in the 50s and 60s in the James Bond boom, both book and movies, who wrote all these things about, I was the resist spy that did this. And they kind of didn't realize or didn't consider the fact that within 20 or 30 years of them writing their books, all the archives would be released, and the world could collect, check, verify whether what they were saying was right or wrong. And some of these spy, I did this double agent kind of books are not worth the paper they're printed on. Some proved to be very, very important and accurate works. Patrick Lee Firma's book about with the SOE in the Aegean and the Balkans again proved to be quite a good one. Others proved to be Popoff, I think it was, the agent, well, double agent. His book turned it to be in a kind of pretending he was James Bond, basically, when he was at a different level of kind of activity. An important double agent in Britain that was sending false information to the Germans, but he kind of invented this very kind of James Bond time that wasn't interesting. So I'm rambling again. Good points about following unit. Hi, Matt. Another person I got to meet in person, Matt from the Armourer's Bench and also from Fighting on Film. And I have my Fighting on Film. One of my stickers is on my my battery pack, so it's forever immortalized there. And my award for winning the movie quiz is on my bookshelf. The only thing I've ever received in my life as any kind of recognition of any kind of skill sets. I rubbed shoulders with Colin. Came over. Colin, hi Colin, if you're watching. I think he's not watching. Colin came over. He can pull out his PhD certificates and things. I have my Fighting on Film 2022. We have Ways movie. Award, what's the word I'm looking for, champion, but I won it in conjunction with Stuart Bertie. I got some of the answers and he got some of the answers and we won it together, but I've got the award, so there we are. I'd like to have a tour about the battles of Caen in September. Any suggestions of who I can book for a tour? I could probably do you a tour about Caen. Colin could do a tour. Scottish Eric Leboeuf could probably do it. Eric Turnbull, sorry, could do probably a tour about Caen. But Caen is more than one operation, of course. There's the city itself. Then you've got Charnwood. You've got Epsom, Goodwood, Jupiter, and not necessarily in order, folks. Those operations. So Caen is a multi-complex set of operations. So doing Caen is more than one thing. Hi Trent, there are a number of recent Forward Observer books available. See Bracketing the Enemy Forward Observers in World War II by John R. Walker. The Forward Observer book I like is the one by, and I've forgotten his name, the guy Richard Weiss, who was the observer with the 30th Division at Moretown. I think it's called Strike Back or Striking. I can picture can't remember the title, but that's a good book on Forward Observers. Rainier is mentioning a couple of shows on medics. Yes. You did a show about the medics with the 4th Armored that was very good, Rainier. As a practicing doctor, your understanding of the medical operations was very good and worthy, and I will have you back on again. And Maddie, you are right. Prit Buttar's books on the Russian side of the conflict are amazing, and I have to add, he is in the same mold as Peter Caddick Adams, an absolutely charming individual who, when you meet him, is just so adorable. Is it okay to say a historian is adorable? It is, because I said it, so he really is. Big Guns and Brave Men, Mobile Artillery Observers, and the Battle of Okinawa by Rodney Earl Walton. Good. Thank you. Rob Crane, which area of the war would you most like to explore yourself and piques your curiosity? It's whatever I'm reading about at the moment, but I have to say some of the jungle-y stuff. Burma, I think, when I talk to people like Rob Lyman about going to Burma, name dropping again, Kohima, Imphal, I think would be incredible to see. And Lucy Betteridge Dyson talking about the Arakan Peninsula, that would be cool to see. Eastern Front as well. Obviously, the obvious ones like Stalingrad, but I think there's many more. I'm surprisingly not well traveled for a World War II guy, because I found that Normandy was where I liked, and that's where I spent a majority of my time. So there you are. And I will be doing some more Bosnia and/or Yugoslavia stuff at some point. I have not created any medic shows here, and additionally, what the impact? Well, look at this. This will serve as a means of explaining how to look through the World War II TV back catalogue. Your help here is playlists. So when you go to the main page on YouTube, you'll see you can go back as just past live streams will take you back just chronologically from the very last show I did to the very first show. Then you can just scroll through that page after page of shows. But the playlists group them down. So there are playlists by theatre, so the Pacific, and then within the Pacific there'd be Burma campaign and island hopping campaign. Within Europe there is, and then there are theme ones. So there you can find shows about armor, you can find shows about medics. I think it's called Medics and Medicine or something. I forget what the playlist is called now. But within that are any shows that have a medical connection with them. So there's probably about 12 in that playlist. So some are exclusively dealing with medical, and some touch on it because the hero of the story was perhaps a medic or something. So that playlist is your way of finding topics that will be of interest to you, and also therefore not finding the ones you're not interested in. If you're not interested in aviation, then looking for one about the US Army or tanks would then eliminate the aviation ones, and vice versa. And yes, Rob Crane saw photos of the desecration cemetery, and I have video footage of it. So I'll be doing something with that in this future thing when I get some spare time. So I will be doing something about that cemetery, about that. So, you've been to Mostar as well, Stuart. So yeah, it was an eye opener for me, and yeah, it's a strange place of kind of friendship and animosity, like a tinder box that could just ignite. But at the same time, as we were told by our host families and things, that there are 60% of mixed marriages in Sarajevo and Mostar. Mostar's a bit different to Sarajevo, but yeah, kind of it's a blend of cooperation and, well, the world, I guess, is a blend of cooperation and moving forwards together in a spirit of harmony, and also a spirit of tension. And I don't like that people there. That's where every country is I guess, caught up in that. There are good people and there are arseholes, as my granddad used to say. Brian Yee is watching but hasn't asked a question. Morton is asked, do you know why Bradley and Patton did not concentrate their forces after Avranches and drive east to encircle the Germans? Well, the thing about standing in Avranches is you realize just how many different directions the Allies could choose between going, because Avranches is really much, you can kind of go south into Brittany, and then southeast, east, so northeast. And I think the Allies were not sure where the Germans were going to go and where the stands were. And yeah, there are, for Middleton's good, coming down the peninsula, as he goes off into Brittany, things don't go so well. You could argue that the other armies going into Brittany don't do so well. And I think it was when they get to Avranches, it's like it's like as they head down the coast towards Coutances and then Avranches, as part of Cobra, the 8th Corps part, it's kind of obvious what the objective is. And I think once you get to Avranches, instead of there being one door ahead of you, there's now six doors to choose from. And at the time, the Allied plan is like, well, which door is going to be the one that takes us to Berlin and kills Germany, kills Hitler and defeats Germany? And now we can look at it and say, well, there were more Germans over there, and you should have gone that way, and that was the door that we should have gone through was the green one, not the blue one. But some of that is hindsight. So I think at the time, knowing which way the Allies to go from Avranches was a bit more uncertain. But now we can definitely say, yes, they should have gone that way. We can say the same things about the Falaise Gap. The Falaise Gap was a victory, but now we can say if we'd done a little bit more there and that army pushed up there, we could have captured more people there. But this is the thing about looking at these events from nearly 80 years on. So holding a weapon, there's holding and there's posing with, isn't there? And I think if you're a visitor there and you pick up a rifle and your wife takes a photo of you, or the husband takes a photo of the wife holding a rifle, there's nothing wrong with that. It's like, this is me holding a rifle, so I understand how heavy they were. And when I was doing the stuff with Rich Fisher at the Monty's Men and explaining that the number 2 gun on a Vickers is carrying the equivalent of, I think it was 70 pounds of gear or something. And so picking up a rifle gives you that indication. So picking up and observing and having your photo taken with it is different to posing with it. I mean, it's that, pointing a gun at someone is different to holding a gun. Smiling while, it's the taking photos at Auschwitz is different to taking a selfie of you smiling at Auschwitz. It's all, as Brad just said there, it's context and what you're doing and why you're doing and your motivation doing it. So that is interested. Janet Oakley, hi Janet, is saying she visited German soldiers' graveyard in Trondheim, Norway. When she was there, the soldier was so young. Are there similar graves in Normandy? Yes, there were 6 German cemeteries in Normandy, and there were German graves towards the rear sections of about 60% of the Commonwealth cemeteries in Normandy. So we have walked past plenty of German cemeteries, those of us who live in Normandy. I assume you still live in France. Yes. Any chance you move back to the UK? Probably not. No, I like living in France. It's not perfect, but it's less imperfect than the UK is. But don't get me started on politics. The things I miss about UK are the things that don't really matter in life, although they do matter, like bitter beer and fish and chips and a decent curry and chatting with mates and stuff like that. But actually, France, on the whole, for a country to live in, I like more. So there we go. Ivan is saying that Rainier's show was an outstanding one, which I agree was in it. The Warriors, yeah, of course. Matt from Fighting on Film comes in with the details about the Bosnian show. The Warriors, 2-part drama, very good show. And the guy from Hornblower, Johan Griffith was in it, who's going through that very public, bitter divorce in the newspapers, isn't he? Matthew McFadden was in it too. Yes, he was, I think, wasn't he? And yes, Balkans is a crucible. Indeed. Manny, could you comment on what the impact of not having Rhino modifications would have been on Cobra? Yeah, so the Rhinos are the Sherman tanks with the ability to cut through hedgerows. Now, I've changed my opinion about this kind of over the years. I used to say a few years ago that, in many ways, the Rhino invention to tanks comes a bit too late because the Allies didn't have them in June, and by the time they go into production, it's too late. But I've revised my thinking now to think that for the 3 or 4 days that Cobra was at its peak, having Rhinos for that operation, if that alone was their use, that was enough to make it worthwhile. In the end, they were used a bit, but the Germans kind of broke because of the bombardment, and Fritz Bayerlen is there in his chateau and seeing tanks bouncing across fields, his own tanks, because hit by this incredible concentration of aerial bombardment. That once there was a bit of a slow start with Cobra. Once it started pushing, the Germans almost retreating faster than the Allies could advance. So the Sherman Rhinos weren't used as much, but there's those early stages, and I was walking those fields a few weeks ago. What would kind of happen? I'm kind of simplifying this, so he's making it more simple than it really was. But kind of instead of in the hedgerows before, kind of trying to break out. What was happening in Cobra is like you got a line of column of Sherman tanks going down the road, then like 50 meters to the left, in the left-hand field was a Rhino going through the field in line with the middle Sherman, then to the right was another Rhino. And you can stand in the fields and see what you still appear to be kind of gaps in hedgerows that have kind of grown up within the vegetation where you see these Rhinos are going. So rather than advancing with one tank, you're advancing with 3 tanks by the Rhinos cutting through the hedgerows. So they weren't used a huge amount in Cobra, but where they were used, it was vital. Does that make sense? Why is there no well-known source book, popular research about the Italian campaign, especially about Salerno? I think there are books about the Italian campaign. I think a lot of the books about the Italian campaign are kind of hidden under a title that brings people in. So I think sometimes books about Monte Cassino, actually Monte Cassino is a third of the book, and actually it's before Monte Cassino, an article on Monte Cassino. So people look at, it's about Monte Cassino. Sometimes you'll find they are about the Italian campaign. You might have one that says Anzio that you would think is just about Anzio, but actually is about the Italian campaign. So I think there are books about the Italian campaign, although I cannot think of any titles right now as I'm talking. A most interesting rambling, Paul. Well, I try. And I'm not going to go on too long because I'm not. Woody, your incoherent bollocks is better than most academic history, no joke. It's very nice to say. I think a lot of academic history is very, very good and better formulated than rambling Woody is sitting here. But I will take that as a compliment because it's nice. Explain to me when that lady thought the war would be over. From Colin, when that lady thought. No, I'm not. No, I can't do that one. It's saying a rude word. Thank you. You said you'd get me with that, and I can't do that. It's a friend of ours who, when referring to a war being over, a battle being over by Christmas, used another word that begins with C and ends with S that came out inadvertently, and it was interesting. But we'll do that. So Stuart's picking up on the idea of the Rhinos. Yeah, I mean, it's very few. I mean, very few. I don't think there were very few at Cobra. They were where they needed. It was, what was it? I haven't got the figures at hand, but it was 65% of the tanks had Rhino cutters fixed on them for Cobra. And of course, if you've got a troop of Shermans, and there's 4, you don't necessarily need them all to have the Rhino. As long as the one at the front does, the one behind. So I think there are more than a few at Cobra. But we'll see. So a very good point in there, Phil. Thank you for bringing that up there. The German war in Yugoslavia was treated as a security conflict, and indeed it was. And clearly, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but the anti-partisan badge particularly kind of comes into its own although that was a 44 thing, kind of based on some of the ideas. It was very much treated as a anti-terrorist, anti-kind of, well, and as you said, the security conflict, as opposed to a war, which is also how they got away with some of the rules of being able to murder people, because they treated it as not the facing. Technically, I suppose Tito's army sometimes were not fighting as a classic army because they were not in uniform, so they could be treated as insurgents and terrorists. That's not the whole big thing. Blake Johnson says, what do you think the next progression of weaponry will be in the growing conflict? World War One, machine gun, tank, World War Two, air power, atomic. This conflict, I don't know. Logistics probably will be the deciding factor, but I'm loath and will not be getting involved in big discussions or even small discussions about what is going on in Ukraine, because A, I don't have the expertise, and B, I think it's inappropriate to be talking about a conflict while it's still raging. I think it's let the professionals sort it out, and people who have a stance on it, who are aware, they're involved in intelligence or military operations or war analysts, they can comment. But I don't kind of think that every World War II, World War One buff spinning in with a theory, but I think this will change the use of paratroopers in the future. I think it's a bit too soon for those sorts of conversations, if you don't mind. I'm going back through questions that were quite a long time ago. I'm looking for movies on YouTube about Eastern Front conflict with English subtitles, and it's just, there are quite a lot there. Message me. I've got quite a lot of films in, but there's a movie site called Eastern Europe Movies, where you can become a member for like a month for like $20 or something, and you can download to keep quite a lot of the Battle of Neretva that I mentioned about Yugoslavia is on there. The Star, I think, a Russian movie that's kind of a bit like a Dirty Dozen, is there. So there are ways of finding. Oh, my voice went there. There are ways of finding. I sound a bit like Kermit there. Movies, Russian-made movies with English subtitles. So message me or something. What's the main difference between the German security organizations, Abwehr, Gestapo, SD? I'm not informed enough to make a judgment about that. That's something for Dr. Phil Blood to do at some point. I kind of think I know it, but I'm not going to commit to saying it and getting it wrong. So have I done, Trent is asking, shows on UK minute drops in Eastern Med 1944-45? Not really, not much yet. Not 44, 45, earlier 42, 43, yes. I'll be trying to do some of that as we go. My long-term plan is, as we go up to the, obviously it's the 80th anniversary of 42 this year, 80th anniversary of 43, and then so on, is to try and, as I get more organized, tackle the campaigns on the anniversaries. So when it gets to 44, 45, if I'm still doing it and I haven't decided to do something else, I will be tackling those kind of things. And the Mediterranean, in Eastern and Western Mediterranean, is very interesting, and I want to learn more about it. Martin, your channel is fantastic. Thank you very much. The mix of folks you get on is incredible. Thank you very much. Also, did anyone ever ask, is there anything new to say? Yeah. Locust Show is an example of what to say. There's honestly, I'm name dropping again. When we're getting up in the hotel and there's me, Sol David, Peter Caddick Adams, Alexandra Ritchie, Katia Hoyer there, and you're just sitting having your croissant or your full English breakfast, the conversation's buzzing about what people are working on and what needs to be explored and what needs to be readdressed. There's shitloads to talk about more about World War II, and not just going over the same old stuff, although some of that is worthy, but actually new, real stuff is doing. So, so I realize I'm still going through messages that were posted some time ago now. They were posted half an hour ago. So I'm going to try and go back. I am still, Pat, trying to do shows on neutral. I want to do a whole week or two about neutrality and what it represents in World War II. So shows about, Spain and Switzerland and whatever. It's just an island, and it's on my list. It's just, you should see my bloody list of shows I've got ideas of. It's great. And Michael Ackerman, thank you very much for doing that incredible Vierville-sur-Mer show. And we will do the Saint Laurent show we're talking about. And you are a rising star in the understanding of defenses in Normandy, and proud to call you a friend, buddy. So thanks for doing that. I'm going to try and speed up and get to some of the more recent questions. People talk about Riccardo D'Este. I don't want to talk about Carlo D'Este particularly. Mr. Baker, just wanted to say that thanks to, I've read McManus, Stahl, Bulger, of course, Caddick Adams. I'm reading yes. If any of those people who you've discovered via this show, aren't they wonderful? David Stahl is an amazing storyteller. Daniel Bulger is incredibly good, and Peter Caddick Adams is amazing. So it is very proud when I get I'm very proud when I get messages and people saying you've brought my attention to, and they name the author. Alexandra Ritchie, for example. If you haven't read her book, she hasn't been on for ages, but we were talking about her coming back on again. If you haven't read her book about Warsaw, insanely good book. So anyone read Nimitz yet, Mr. Baker? Is that the Craig Simons book? I haven't. I will be having Craig on to talk about Nimitz at some point in the future. We're going back to veterans there. I have done a bit of traveling with two or three German veterans, but not very many. So there we go. Michael's having debates with people on about the bell tower in Vievel being blown, despite the fact that I think possibly anything about church towers and Omaha has people getting their churches mixed up because there's more than one church of Omaha. I think often people think about observation, they get confused between sectors and things like that. I haven't got any big plans about what they're talking about, but another loaded question: do we take war films to literary? Now, I believe someone, I forget who it is now. Yes, no. Robbie and Matt from Fighting on Film went on the History Rage podcast recently and talked about this, that we should be able to detach ourselves. I haven't watched the show yet. I don't even know the show is out yet. We should be able to detach ourselves from war films and understand they are not documentaries. They are not serving the same purpose as books. They can help with our understanding World War II. But yes, we do. I think all of us are guilty of when a movie like Dunkirk or War Horse or 1917 or whatever it be comes out, Operation Mincemeat is going, why is this not telling this history absolutely perfectly like history was? Well, movies are not the same as books, and so they're different. So I think that they're doing that. So Robbie and Matt are addressing that very point. So there we go. And Michael and Stuart carrying on the discussion about church towers. Colin, you are here, buddy. Hi, Colin. I'm catching these are comments. Something. Adrian, that's a good point. Any plans for more outside broadcasts? Not immediate. There's a reason for that. One is Mag is back to work as a tour guide. Those outside things we were doing when we weren't working, there was no tourists coming, so we had nothing else to do. One of the camera people is no longer in the country. Colin is also working all the time. Mag is working all the time. And also we had, although it's ironic saying this on a day when my earlier show didn't happen, is it the potential of technological failures and connections and stuff. So tomorrow's show with Arthur about the first SS Panzer Corps defense of the Burgebus Ridge is the kind of thing that I would have done a year and a half ago with live cameras on the ground. But now what happened is about a month ago, I went out and took footage of the places Arthur wants to talk about, which I've still got to edit. That's tomorrow's job before tomorrow night's show that fingers crossed will happen. Into things. So when Arthur is talking about Goodwood approaching the railway line, I will have the footage taken at that spot. So it's kind of like the best of the live thing in that the footage is high quality. I have it on my computer. I can pop it up on screen. The signal's not going to drop out. It's high definition. It's not jerky like the live stuff. There's no one out on site. So it's nearly like being live, but not live. So, and as it happens, the live shows it's not like they were crazily more popular than the shows with the historian talking. So if they were 10 times more popular, I'd probably do more of them. But yeah, circumstances have changed. Mag's busy all the time. Colin's busy all the time. And so probably not so much the live stuff, but it is something I want to go back into, but think of a better way of doing it. And are you still running a tour in October? Yes, History. Well, not this October. It'll be next April, next October. I'm not doing anything this October. So I'll be doing some stuff, doing some week-long tours. I contact you via Patreon, or just Andreas, go to the World War II TV website or the D-Day Historian website and do a contact message from one or other of those websites. It's probably the best one, but you can contact me through Patreon as well. A very good point, Norma. Forward Observer books, George Blackburn's books. Anton is asking, has anyone given any serious thought to clearing and then using the very extensive West European canal network to alleviate the supply hiatus in late summer 44? Probably, but I don't know who. And it's certainly not something I have thought about. Phil would be able to come on and talk us about the use of railway lines by both sides in World War II, but canals, I don't know anyone has given that any thought, but I wouldn't be surprised if someone had, but I don't know who that might be. And you're right, Norma. Pritt is a lovely man. We're talking about Pritt Buttar again, and so kind, and also a brilliant historian, and a great human being, which is a lovely mix to be both of those things. By Tank into Battle by Stuart Hills and The Battle of Tanks by Lloyd Clark, very good. Lloyd Clark is an underrated historian. I think his Arnhem book, I got to struggle with a few bits of it, but I think very good stuff he does. Let's go to Pearl Harbor. Well, tonight I'm doing a live stream, Mag. We can't pack up there, and the cats won't be fed in the morning. And Darren is saying, I guess that's going back to where would you like to visit. Well, I'll go with you there, Darren. It was good to meet you at the show at the weekend, albeit very briefly. And yes, we should all do a big group trip to Hill 170. Good grief. I'm going through the more questions there, and oh God, as I go through this, I'm not even catching up with 9:05 yet, and it's 9:20 over here, and you 8:20 there. So I'm sure it's bringing up the Rhino tanks again. But I don't know. I haven't got my figures at my hand, but I would suggest we have enough Rhino tanks to do what was planned with them for Cobra. Not fully, but I would argue they do have enough for what they need them for. I mean, more, I guess you could argue, would be better, but I think we have enough. But we can disagree to disagree, as we have over the years over many things, Stuart. Now you'll hate this one. Was Vida Stonza 62 the strongest of the nests on Omaha? Bought the new book Vida Stonza 62 by Koiskin, which claims that, well, this is a very complicated question because of the very way the Vida Stons nests work, in that a Vida Stons nest is not primarily shooting at the bit of ground in front of it. So if you claim a Vida Stons nest is the most significant, that doesn't necessarily follow that it's the bit of beach in front of it that is the most deadly, because Vida Stons are firing weaponry a mile or two left and right. I still maintain that the most significant defenses are probably on Omaha, on Dog Green, but then that means we are ignoring the fact that I went to Stephen Fisher's amazing Sword Beach lecture on Sunday morning, and he, by showing it there, just reminds just how many sets of defenses there were on Sword Beach. Is that Sword Beach is by far and away the most fortified beach, and anyone who says it isn't is not looked at the data. So, but Omaha, which is the worst, most deadly Vida Stons, I don't. The Vida Stons is 62. We're caught up in the whole Heinz Sevelo exaggeration, the butcher of Omaha. I killed 1,000. Yeah, so there's too much, not too much. There's a lot of emotion attached to the understanding Omaha. Omaha is the most, I think, of all the 5 beaches, the one where everyone has enough, too much kind of emotional attachment to it. They've read books and things, and there's too much kind of, from the American point of view, Bedford Boys, and all that loss of life there, which means that you're ignoring the loss of life on Fox Green and Fox Red, and Omaha, you have to remove the emotion to kind of get to any understanding of understanding it. So that's my kind of Omaha thing. Do you play mini war games? I don't play any war games. I did do a bit of war gaming when I was in my teens at school, but I've done nothing since then. So that's a quick one. We're back to First Assault of Code. We're small, but yeah, but I don't want to get sidetracked in a bit. But the way they were using them in the kind of columns, if the plan for Cobra had been to advance the armor on a broader front. Yes, I agree, there weren't enough rhinos. But because they're advancing on the kind of narrow front, there were, I think, enough rhinos. Although you could argue, I suppose, that it's a chicken and egg thing in that they had to do a narrow front because they don't have enough rhinos. If they had more, would they have done a wider one? But given that Cobra worked, albeit with a slow start, I guess there's no point debating about it too much. Cardinville needs a movie. For those who don't know, that's the farm near Brentford-Lauriers. That is kind of swallowed up by an industrial state now. So that probably needs a movie. There's lots of other Canadian stores I think also need a movie. Yeah. So someone just said, I don't remember who said it, but someone said, I don't know how World War III will be fought, but the next one will be fought with sticks and stones. That is a very good point and worth talking about. And is it true that the Red Army destroyed the German troops along with the city during the Battle of Stalingrad? Not quite sure what you mean by that. destroyed. I mean, a German army was surrounded there and captured, and a lot were killed, but destroyed is a strange use of word there. The Battle of Stalingrad was obviously a defeat for the Germans, but I'm not sure what you mean by destroyed the German troops. The city was incredibly damaged. I mean, very little bit left. I mean, that was, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Sorry. The people are now talking about what the Abwehr and Gestapo were, and yes, that's that. We could do that, but I'm not going to talk today. Robert is asking, will you be talking about the Allied strategy about getting ports in Brittany after Cobra breakout? It will come up in Friday's show about ports. I don't know how much it'll come up in that show, and at some point I will be doing shows about Brittany, but not in the immediate future. But yes. Robert is saying the Nimitz book is very good. I'm not surprised it is. Craig Simons is a good author. So, question: what leads from the event? I mean, yes, I got Lee. Well, yes, I made some more contacts there for future guests. Yes, and reinforced friendships with people who've been on before, who will be on again. Sol David has got on again in a week or two's time, and Rob Lyman will be on again at some point in the future. So yes, it was more about just actually meeting people and having some social time with them rather than just meeting them behind a TV screen or you can mute on a monitor screen. So yes, I did make a few contacts and yes. If I was the character reenactor's role tomorrow in any sphere of World War II, what unit would I be in? Well, I'm too old and fat now to be to portray anything other than some fat old stores guys like issuing pairs of socks. Would be the only role that'd be suitable to me now. Yeah. And Colin, yes, you're right. Alexander Rich is an incredibly good historian. If you haven't yet, make Warsaw 1944 your next read. I agree completely about that. Yes. I'm gonna kind of skip on it because there's so many questions coming in. Yes, I talked about Stephen Fisher's Sword Beach. I assume it'll be released as a pod on the We Have Waves thing. I hope so. Stephen Fisher's Sword Beach tour was brilliant, and Mark Milner's talks were brilliant as well. Mark Milner, I wish he was on social media, is a brilliant historian. Stopping the Panzers is an incredibly good book, and his Atlantic book is incredibly good as well. Yeah, so we'll do the Cobra discussion. We'll carry on with that later on. And I think I've caught up with the questions, which is good. Someone, Antoinette, is saying we missed you while you were gone, but it gave us more time to catch up on past shows. Yes, and in fact, interestingly, kind of viewing numbers didn't really drop. People were watching, but what they were doing is they're watching the older shows again, getting time to catch up. So it kind of served a purpose, and it means I don't have to always work lots of shows every week. So I will do that again at some point. I will do some. I take a break and give you time to catch up. Yeah, Robert is okay, Darren. As I understand, I don't know what the health scare was, but Rob Lyman had a health scare, but he's back home and it seems to be okay. But it was very intensive and full on and lots of talking, and it was a bit hot in the sun, and so I don't know what the issue was, but yeah, Rob Lyman is an incredible guy and has covered lots and lots of theaters and lots of battles. So yeah, the Cobra question, we'll continue that when I had a message from Stephen Ossad on, and it's just a connection issue. We'll just reschedule that. We'll do something else. We'll let him go to an office or something, or we'll do it on his phone. We'll work out a way of doing that. But tomorrow, just remind you, we will be doing the Operations Goodwood and Spring, ostensibly from the German point of view, with Arthur coming on again. He was on a long time ago talking about the never-ending army of supply, and he's on talking about his first, and which is out, volume of his book, and the second volume is coming out soon. And he's done some incredible work understanding it from the German point of view and that whole defensive area and Goodwood. And we can never have too many reappraisals of Goodwood and Spring as far as I am concerned. So anything worth visiting in the area where Cobra, so you start it. Well, yeah, I mean, there's nothing to see in the rectangle except the straight road that the aircraft came down is worth seeing. And there's a monument to Cobra there that I think gets Bradley's middle initial wrong from memory. But then pushing on, following the routes is very rewarding. You can follow some of 2nd Armoured On and 3rd Armoured On. And of course, if you go to the left, you kind of touch on Blue Coat because when you think about Cobra, you have to really kind of think about Blue Coat as being the if we're talking boxing analogy, if Cobra is is a right hook, then while the Germans are reeling from the right hook, that the blue coat comes in with a kind of a body blow to the left, not as sweeping as the right hook, but hits in the ribs there, and then so the Germans get that kind of double wham there from those two operations. So you can't treat Cobra and blue coaters separately; they are kind of part of the same thing. And then you get onto Montpensier and all that later on. Maddie is saying Brothers in Arms by James Holland is another decent book about the Sherwood Rangers during World War II. Yes, well, because James did is kind of take all those earlier books by Stuart Hills and all those kind of people and kind of condense it into one book. I'm only halfway through it, but I think it's up there with Malta and Burma as being one of his best books. And I agree with people saying that the post-assault phase of Normandy is more interesting, and it is, and it's of course, as we always talk about, it's the fact that the D-Day beaches are the bits that everyone goes to because that's what they think they go to, and it's visual, but it's getting inland is the most important thing. Any more pre or post-war episode? That's a good question, Dean. And yes, Giles Milton is going to come on and talk about his Checkpoint Berlin book, which is just immediately post-war. And I think I want to do a week of things about that immediate aftermath of World War II. We did a show with Claire about the DP camps. I think some more of that would be interesting. Might even nudge up as far as the Berlin airlift. Technically, it's not obviously it's not World War II. Philip Blood, I think it would be interesting to bring on and talk about that post-war German situation. So yeah, pre-war stuff. We touched on Spanish Civil War. I really want to stick broadly to the World War II theme. I want to bring Katia Hoyer on at some point, and she obviously wrote about the earlier German empires, but Katia is so good. I feel I need to bring her on again because she's great, and so maybe something about how World War II morphs into something else in Germany, what happens with German politics, that might be something interesting. But I'm definitely not going to go into Korean War, Vietnam War, things like that. That's definitely beyond the scope. If I do pre-war or post-war, it will have to be fundamentally connected to what World War II how they connect with World War II. What are your recommendations? Benjamin Ann is asking about for improving the Normandy battlefields. More blue totems, informational signs. Yeah, I mean, it would be, I suppose, really, Blood and Iron is the book. Norma, yes, by Katia, is, I think, more of an organized thing. Whereas what happens in Normandy is you get things like the towns off Vers-sur-Mer have done a set of panels that are different to the ones that have done on Hermanville and the Sword Beach. And I think some kind of overviewing book about, not book, a set of information about all the monuments in kind of some central place, with some kind of app or something that could connect all the different things. You have to kind of juggle lots of things. There's tour books, there's guide books, there's tour guides, there's panels, there's signs telling you to some place. But I think something where the Normandy campaign can be treated as a whole thing. Sean Claxton's book about Brett Villorgas, I could have Sean on. Sean, I could, but Sean, of course, don't forget, Sean went on Brad's On This Day in Canadian Military History and gave a blinding discussion there about Brett Villorgas and the tanks there. So Brad did it. So I don't think there's a need for me to do it because Brad did it. So but Sean will will at some point be a guest again on World War II TV. Just a question of what it is. But yeah, it'll be interesting to talk about and talk about and a question where to stay. It's a good place to stay because it's essential to everything. Yeah, so I've caught up. So because I don't want more questions because I'm getting a bit hot here now, and I'm going to have a break because I think if I keep these shows a bit shorter, I'll do 10 more minutes. I'll go up to an hour and a half, then I will stop. Okay, so throw some more questions on me. China, Scott, yes. I've forgotten his name. Rana thingy was where you have ways. And he's writing about China. There's another historian writing about China, an Australian who I've been trying to get in touch with, who haven't responded to. But yes, China. See, there's another thing where pre-war for us is World War II for China. You could very easily suggest that 1939 is not the correct date of the start of World War II. It's sometime in the 30s because everything kicks off in China in the Japanese Chinese War before World War II. So definitely some stuff about China and Japan in the late 30s I would like to do in the future, and therefore probably doing some stuff about China post-war, connecting Rana Mitter. That's exactly who I'm talking about there. Brad, yes, that's the one. And but have I done much on the home front? No, Paul, I have not done much on the home front. And yes, your Daniel Todman is one of the people I was there. I didn't get a chance to speak to, but I have been in touch with Daniel in advance, and I've got Daniel's book. And Daniel, I would like to get on, and I will get him on at some point to talk about Britain's war. And Alan Allport will be back on again at some point, because I absolutely love Alan Allport's writing, and we have talked about him coming on doing something. I forget what it was we talked about him doing. I think it was about the British Army, just a general one about what was the Tommy of World War II. So gonna do something with brilliant. So Daniel Tobin will be coming on, and anyone who's jumping in saying, oh, and Chats is going to be on. Yes, Andy is going to be coming on Norma and doing a bit about the auxiliary units. He was on, if you remember, in the very early days of World War II when I was clunky and not so good, and it was Zoom rather than StreamYard. But Chats will be back on at some point and be talking about his work with the auxiliary units, and there's possible conjunction of something between Monty's Men and them and stuff that'll be really good. Manchuria, yes, good. And yes, Allport is amazing. And yeah, Daniel Todman and Jonathan Fennell are two. They did a panel, and Jonathan Fennell I've been in touch with as well. I spoke to him. Jonathan Fennell will be coming on at some point. He's also talking about the war. So Jonathan Fennell and Daniel Todman will be future guests on World War II TV. It's just a question of when and getting them in. And yeah, and that is, I'm at the point now where I don't have now to kind of go out and find the guests, because they're kind of coming to me now, and people are saying, oh, you should go on Woody's show because he's not a complete arse, and you can talk about stuff with him. So that's good. David Starr will be on again now. So just to bring things to an end, I'll just tell you what's coming up. I'll open so the reason my eyes are now putting up my calendar. So what we have coming up is in August, the first week is going to be the Pacific ground war campaign. So we have John McManus coming on again, Jeff Roker's coming on talking about his missing Marine projects, Sol David's coming on to talk about King Company of the unit that Sledge was part of. JD, History Underground, if he's still there, is coming on to talk about his travels to Guam and Tinian and Saipan. Matt McLachlan is coming on talking about a breakout from a prisoner of war camp in Australia, the Cara breakout, which will be quite cool. And Thomas McKenna is coming on talking about the Muslim Filipino resistance efforts, which is quite niche. Then the next week, Pacific Air Campaign. Paul Ham is coming on doing a very controversial show because his view about the atomic bombs will be interesting. Kit Chapman's talking about the Manhattan Project. Russ Lau is coming on talking about an air crew of B-24. Damon Stout and Henry Sedge are coming on talking about VMF 114, the fighting in Peleliu, so quite American-centric that week. Then the following week, a kind of a random show. Ian McGregor's coming on to talk about his new book about Stalingrad. That'll be fantastic. Martin Morgan's doing some Normandy myths. That'll be fantastic. Anthony Tucker-Jones is doing a Falaise show on the anniversary of the Falaise Gap. That'll be amazing. Philip Blood is on talking about the anti-bandit order that kind of came up in discussion early on. The following week, towards the end of August, an Italian living in England called Gianluca is going to talk about the Jewish Infantry Brigade. John Buckley, the amazing John Buckley, is going to come on and do something about British armour in Normandy. That'll be fantastic. Sean Feast is doing something about Pathfinders. Will Isledale might be coming on doing something about Pathfinders or Kamikaze, the British response to Kamikazes. That'll be really good. New Zealand War is coming up, part 2. Jeff Plowman's talking about the New Zealand tanks in Monte Cassino. That'll be fantastic. To go ahead into September, there'll be another Arnhem week. There'll be some more stuff about the Eastern Front. I'm going to try and plan a Channel Islands week, so a whole week about the Channel Islands. There'll be some amazing stuff about Arnhem. I know I did Arnhem last year, but there'll be more stuff about Arnhem. October, going to be 2 weeks, maybe even 3 weeks dedicated to the 80th anniversary of El Alamein, with historians from South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Italy, Germany. Oh, I made some contact with some German historians. I want to get more Germans on. So Dragoon, nothing Dragoon as yet, although it may come up. It's that situation where everyone says, I list all the things I'm doing, and then people come up with the things I'm not doing. I am only human. I will get to things like Dragoon eventually. Pathfinders, yes, we're talking about bomby Pathfinders, not paratroopy Pathfinders. That'll be good. So yeah, if I get that on YouTube when I do a show and people said, you know, I've done an hour and a half talking about something, say, but you didn't discuss this. Go, no, I didn't. This is a big fucking war, and I can't do all of it at one point. Any more Canadian focused content? You may have noticed that over this last few months, I have dropped away from doing Canadian content, and there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is Mr. Brad St. Croix, because although I will be doing some more Canadian content, I want to find a bit of gap to allow Brad to push on with his Canadian content, because he's doing it really, really well. So I will do some more Canadian content. I will bring Mark Milner back on at some point. Yeah, so, but yeah, and so sorry, Brad, but I'm going to hand over a lot of the Canadian stuff to you. And that's one of the things that when I started, I mean, Brad wasn't doing stuff, and now he is. So that's why Sean went on his show, not with me. I will do some more Canadian, but that's, you know, if I had it the other day when someone pointed out that little bit of tiny bit of footage I used in the introduction to New Zealand at War Week was actually Australians. It was that now it's taken. This footage was taken, right? Okay, so get this. It's a bit of public domain footage of the post Alamein Anzac kind of ceremony. So there's New Zealanders there and Australians there, okay? And the bit of footage I used actually kind of panned around to show some Australians with the Australian slouch hat, as opposed to the Kiwis with the lemon squeezer kind of hat. And this guy did a big angry, "You are insulting my grandfather's memory by using the wrong bit of footage in that clip there," just as a 10-second intro to the show. And I'm like, fuck off, you know? How many other shows, how many historians based in Normandy are even devoting a week to New Zealand war? How many other people have been out there and found these New Zealand historians, like Reg Newell talk about the Treasury Islands, and Jeff Plowman who's coming on, and Glyn Harper, who was supposed to be on this morning but will be on again later. I mean, I'm out there busting my bloody balls finding historians who are experts on stuff, and people will always find a thing that you didn't do this, and why aren't you doing that, and that bit of, you know, it's like, just I'm ranting now, but sometimes it can be a bit, you're not doing this. Yeah, okay, I'm literally here on my own. I haven't got a production team. Mac helps me with all this stuff. Paul Douglas is asking, what's your favorite war battle during World War II? What's your favorite 82nd Airborne Division or 101st Airborne Division? My favorite airborne division is British 6th Airborne Division, because I'm British. A favorite is an odd word, but the one I think I like reading about the most is 6th Airborne. I have read a hell of a lot about the 101st Airborne, because you had to know that stuff as a guy 10 years ago, because it was in the post Band of Brothers thing, and I did lots of Band of Brothers stuff. I'm unashamedly saying I made money out of doing Band of Brothers stores, and I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed meeting the veterans and stuff, but I'm less interested in the 101st Airborne than I used to be. Any French historians, it is an uphill struggle, Andreas, to find French historians who are confident enough of their English to come on. I would love to get more French historians on. I just don't know why. I did a minor burp there. I do apologize. I don't know why I can't find them. Cedric Maz came on and talked about Bir Hakeim. But yeah, I'd love to get more French historians on. But I'm struggling. Any good reading on the British Commandos or the Partisans' effectiveness in Europe? There's lots of good books on. There's a new book about resistance in Normandy by the woman who's it's one by woman, one by lots of new books on resistance. I bought some of them. Again, use the playlists. I know this is about, you're asking about books, not about my shows, but look on the playlists on World War II TV. You'll find we've done lots of shows about resistance, and often these shows are by someone who's written a book about the resistance and commandos. Damon Lewis does lots of stuff about commandos. Neil Barber's done stuff about commandos. There's lots of good books there. What about other? Yeah, right, Darren. Yes, I want to do more Welsh stuff, more stuff. I do know Tino Struckman. Well, I know of him. I think he's one of the people I've emailed and I haven't had a response to. I can't remember. Oliver I hate pronouncing names. I'm tired. I know I don't know him. I will try and get in touch. What happens is, I send out lots of feeler emails. Some come back and some don't. And but there are lots and lots of historians I'm in touch with. So yeah, Mike Peters, I have been in discussion with to do glider pilot stuff in Sicily. I think that probably he might be on before then, but definitely in 2023 for the 80th anniversary of Sicily, there'll be at least 2 weeks, maybe even 3 weeks, maybe even a month to go devoted to Husky. I might do a month. There's so much content we could do there. And the Sicily campaign is kind of a month, isn't it, really? So we could do airborne landings again. We could do naval. We could do resistance. We could do Italian divisions there. We could do German divisions there. We could do the American, the Canadians, the Brits. There's also, so I will definitely, absolutely, definitely be doing a lot of stuff about Sicily next year if I'm not dead, because if people don't piss me off by saying you haven't done this yet. So I'll do another minute or two, then I'll stop. So yeah, I tell you what, it is interesting when I'm doing this event, the We Have Ways event, people coming out to me and saying thank you for what you do. But I say you do get these messages saying you're not doing enough this, you're not doing that. It's as if I'm like the BBC, with thousands of people who can be making the BBC right now are probably making 50 different programs because they've got thousands of people. I'm just me, and I do occasionally hold the front page. I do occasionally have a day, not very often, where I sit in my bed pajamas and watch, graze on snacks from the fridge and watch shit on TV. That doesn't happen very often, but I do that sometimes. But sometimes I'm doing 16-hour days, folks. And this is not a poor me kind of post. It's just saying I am putting in an inordinate amount of time into this project. And just a reminder, if you are here watching and you have not yet considered becoming a patron or a YouTube member, if you can find a couple of quid to give me via Patreon or YouTube every month, it may not make a huge difference losing that 2 quid or 5 quid to you, but it makes a huge difference to me, because I said this the other day on Twitter, I could very easily, this is not a threat, Woody's not threatening to throw his toys out of the pram, the stroller, okay? I'm just saying I could very easily go back to guiding, work less hours per week, earning more money, doing something that is quite easy to me, because guiding I'm just doing the regular, American circuit. But what I'm enjoying doing is this. But to bring you these 4 or 5 shows a week and is incredibly time consuming. The creating of the graphics is incredibly time consuming. The emails takes a lot of time. Things like today, when both shows have not worked because of various issues, that takes time. And thank you, Norma, and thank you to new patrons like Steve Miller, Andrew Skitt, James Luffman, who've joined up there. But there are some of you who are regular viewers who do not yet support me, and fine. I will absolutely keep on doing this as long as I can, justify it, and hope that a lot of people, and I'm glad that people can watch this who can't afford books, who can't afford to, and they will always get stuff, and I will never. Rob Crane, the Patreon links in every single show I do, not this one. The description, I will put it afterwards. The links are at the bottom of any show I do. Open up the description. The links to Patreon are there. Go to the YouTube main page. All the little shows have links to Patreon. It's easy to find. And yeah, but it is not, this is financially not as lucrative for me as guiding by a like 3-fold margin. Okay. So I'm not anywhere near knocking this on the head and going back to guiding, because I prefer this to guiding. But I'm in my 50s. I don't have much of a pension. I don't own my own house anymore. I'm in a rented accommodation. I don't go get you can get your little miniature violins out, okay? But eventually I might have to think what's going to be best for me. And if this is not bringing me in enough, and maybe it's not bringing me because I'm not good enough, I don't know, but I might have to go back to guiding. But I want to do this. I think what I'm doing is unique. In that there's a slightly different format. Brad is doing something unique as well. JD is doing something else as well. But and thank you very much, Darren, all the others. I don't know, Pat, whether you're on Patreon or not. I can't remember. I think you're a YouTube member, maybe not a Patreon. But yeah, either or both works well for me. But I'm at the point now where it's not, I'm turning over an income. I'm not going to deny I'm getting money from Patreon. I am getting money from Patreon, but I could get more by going back doing guiding. Okay, so Maggie's like and share. And there's nothing wrong with guiding. You're absolutely right. I like guiding, and I might go back to doing guiding. It's just that there's 150 people doing guiding in Normandy, but there's only me doing a regular YouTube channel. So I'm one of many people doing it well, guiding, and I'm probably not as good as a lot of people. There are better guides than me, younger guides than me, who are coming up doing it, who have great ideas. I think I'm quite good at this. I'm not perfect at this. I'm learning all the time. This takes an extraordinary amount of time. I don't want to look for just an extraordinary amount of time, and I enjoy it, but it's just insane the hours I work at this. But I say I do like it. But anyway, I'm rambling a bit now. I was rambling a bit at the beginning, but I'm I'm rambling more now. So yeah, please, yeah, consider becoming a patron, but consider becoming a YouTube channel member. And honestly, it's the old every penny helps. It's a lot of time, and it's not just the time; it's the software. The StreamYard subscription costs money. The camera costs money. The books I have to buy, because some publishers send me books, some don't buy books. The research work. The going out taking a film, because if I'm not guiding, I go out to take film. Fuel is expensive now, so if I drive down to somewhere to take film, that's another 20-30 euros on that, and I've got and all that. So it is an ongoing thing. Rob is saying, not to blow smoke up your ass, but what you offer is unique and exceptional. It's Brett. Thank you. So yeah, thank you. And again, I would point out, I am the stadium. The guests are the headline acts, and I kind of hold it together and do the glue of things. And I would like to think some of my questions are insightful. Sometimes I ramble. Sometimes I get accused of talking too much. I get accused of talking not enough. And it's anyway, whatever. So yeah, we'll see. But I'm going to carry on with this certainly for at least another year or two, and then long term we'll just have to see whether it builds to something that is honestly ongoing as a financially viable thing to be my main job. It obviously was born out of having nothing else to do during lockdown, but now I don't have nothing else. I could do something else. So I don't want to do something else, not because I don't like guiding, but because I like this more. And I think this is, and it's about the reach. I will stop in a minute, but when you're a private guide, as I am, only people who can afford to A, travel to Normandy, and B, afford a private guide can have access to someone like me or Colin or Mag. And I like now the fact, because I get emails from people. I got an email from a 16-year-old Sikh living in Birmingham, I think, who was thanking me for highlighting what Indian people of color did for the war effort, and how much he'd learned from my channel. Well, that's incredibly rewarding. Now, this 16-year-old lad in Birmingham is probably not going to go out there and buy lots of books, because a 16-year-old, he's got other things to do. But the fact he can watch YouTube free is thanks to you people who are patrons. You are helping. That's it. That's the way. That's the angle you should think of it. If you're umming and ahhing about whether or not you want to support me financially, yes, you're helping me financially, but what you're also doing, which is more important, is you're helping give access to this to people who can't afford it. The people who are living, get out little tiny violins again, the single mothers in Detroit who might be watching me, who want to learn about World War II, who perhaps are thinking of doing a kind of online university course about war studies, or the people who are trying to investigate their family members and who can't afford books. I know there are libraries, but not everybody can get to libraries these days. But those people who are not sure what they want to do as a career, they can carry on and write your own book, Paul. I've done 2. I have no plans for any more books at the moment. Well, I say that I've got one plan for a book possibly, which is quite exciting. And yeah, Jay, not everyone can afford to travel and afford to go. So what the thing about this is, I had this conversation at the weekend with people. What I'm doing is not the best model for bringing finance. If I held all my best shows, so in a week of shows, right, I've got historian A, B, C, and D, and then there's the headline historian like Peter Caddick Adams or John McManus or someone, right? What if I was sensible? The clever way of doing this would be to hold back the show with the best guest to be behind Patreon, so that only the guests, only the people who paid the Patreon get it, and then maybe release it to the public a week later. Okay, that's the best model for making YouTube a financially viable thing. I hate it because I don't like the idea of it not being everything available to everybody at the same time. You know, the 16-year-old kid who's watching me, who then can't watch the show when everybody else is, can't join in with the live chat because he or she is not a Patreon. That's why, folks, I like doing it the way I'm doing it. The shows are live. Everybody has access to it. I know it's time zones. I can't always be in everybody's, whatever. Whatever time of day I did it, it'd be wrong for some people, okay? But everybody has at face value the same opportunity to be part of it and join in the chat and ask the questions to historians. If I hide the best shows behind a paywall, behind the Patreon system, they don't have the immediate access. So what if you are umming and ahhing about whether you want to support me, think about those people who can't afford to get books. You're helping them. You're helping them get access to this history. You're helping them get access to them. So yeah, so there we go. And there are lots of people who are helping each other out, and Brad helps there. And thank you, Colin. That's why I'm proud to call you my friend. Yeah, it's absolutely vitally important. I earned money for 20 years by offering private tours. Well, the first few years weren't always private tours, but yeah, I want to. This sounds really overly earnest now, but I want to give back. I want to get these books that come out that are 30 quid when you buy them brand new. You know, people can't afford those books, some people, and that's why. And some people just don't read books. That's one of the things I found talking to members of the public We Have Ways this weekend, is there are a whole lot of people out there who just don't read books. That they use podcasts, they use YouTube, they watch documentaries, they do use other sources. So thank you very much. I'm very proud of you too, Mag. That they use this resource, and you supporting me is helping get those people to understand their and thank you very much. I've just got an email in. Rob Crane has become a patron, so there we are. My little plea there has got me a new patron. So thank you very much, Rob. Most appreciated. So there we are. So I think I'll bring things to an end. We've done an hour and 40 minutes. Maybe any throw me a last question. And Antoinette is saying that is why you're so important. So there we are. So yeah, the other thing is people say you should do short shows, 20 minutes, 15 minutes. Yeah, sure. Again, you've got Peter Caddick Adams, you've got Kevin Hemel on. What's the point of having them on for 15 minutes? It's like when Bruce Springsteen plays, does he play for 15 minutes or does he play for 4 hours? He plays for 4 hours, because we want to hear everything he's got to say. There's other channels doing these 15-minute things, and JD, History Underground, does amazing short videos. It's a completely different area to me. He's doing those amazing visual walkthrough of battlefields. He's doing that really well. And that's short shows, and it fulfills a particular demographic of YouTube. I want to bring these people on and use them at detail. So next time Alexandra Ritchie is on, I can see it being a 2-hour discussion, because it'll be Alexandra knows shitloads about the Eastern Front and Poland and German, and she's a brilliant person. So if I do that, then it'll be for a length of time. And yeah, I could break them up into small portions. But then if you don't do the stuff live, you don't have the interaction with you lot. So there you go. So no big questions coming in, just comments, people saying thank you very much. Just want to say hello and thank you for all your efforts, and I won't embarrass myself by attempting to pronounce your name there. So thank you very much. And who's going to win the ladies Euros? I don't know. I haven't been watching. I've been away. I haven't got back. The best team will win. What's your So I just asked for a question to finish things off. What's your opinion on Operation Market Garden? My opinion about Operation Market Garden is, if I'm name dropping again. I think it was me. And it might have been Soul David. It might have been we said. A friend of mine, Neil Story, is a ripperologist, meaning he writes about Jack the Ripper, amongst other things. And I said to him once, Neil, what is the worst thing that could happen to you as a ripperologist? And he said, finding out who Jack the Ripper was. I'm about, isn't that what you want to know? He said, no, because that ends all the discussions. It ends all the books. So Market Garden, I think, is one of the battles that's important, in that it will be endlessly discussed. Throw 4 or 5 historians in a pub and shout, what went wrong at Arnhem? And you'll get 4 or 5 different versions of what happened. I have Sebastian Ritchie coming on in September, who wrote a book about Arnhem called The Arnhem Myth or Beyond. I forget what his book was called. But he's looked at some of the air transport stuff and blown a few myths out of the water. And Weibo, whose surname I can't remember, who was the creator, owner, setter-upper of the Hartenstein Hotel, who I got to meet in June. Thank you, Joel, for the introduction. Is coming onto a show about like 10 things about Arnhem. He knows stuff about Arnhem that really no one said. Really, really cool stuff. So that's why I wasn't going to do an Arnhem week this week. When I met Weibo, and he's like 70 something, so I can't, he's not young. I can't maybe talk to him in 20 years' time. Get it done now. That would be amazing. So Market Garden serves the purpose as being the battle that keeps us talking about the war. One of those that means we then have interest elsewhere. If someone could come in and say, here's where Market Garden went wrong. Here's a definitive list of things that went it wrong, and I can prove conclusively that's where it all went wrong, then it ends a debate, doesn't it? It ends a debate. So it's important to just keep on discussing these things. So Market Garden is an incredibly complex and complicated thing. And someone, Stuart just said, and someone said about Monty. Yeah, Monty. If we did, as much as it can be frustrating talking about Monty, it's good that we're talking about Monty. It's good that people still have opinions. Still, people get hit under the collar and say, "Oh, he was a fool. He was brilliant." You know, I had that the other day a comment saying Monty was, just awful. Well, some people think that, and some people think the opposite. And some people think Patton was great. Some people think the opposite. Some people haven't decided yet. Some people still have. I will answer this question. I'm going to go there. Norma, great. I'll come back to your question in a second, Ben. Market Garden is a gateway drug. That it is, Norma. Market Garden is that, I'll just try. It's the thing you say when you say, I'm just going to the pub for a drink, and you come back 8 pints later. Market Garden is the, oh my God, what was started. And what do I think about the Battle of Arkham? Well, Colin said earlier, Phil, we had discussed it. We're thinking of coming up to see you in November. So I'm giving you a good warning, because you've got 3 months, whatever it is, to move house, so we can't find it. We are thinking of coming up and spending a few days there. I would be honored and delighted if you can spend some time with us and show us some things, and we will buy you beers as much as you want, Phil. So we'll come and understand that later on. So someone just said, have I this? I'll get back to Benjamin's question. Have I read Beaver's book about Market Garden? If so, what do you think about it? I didn't like it at all. I don't think it was anything like his best book. I don't even know what his best book was, although apparently his latest one on the Russians in the 30s, I think it is. Rob Lyman says it's outstanding, so I don't know. Beaver is not in my list of preferred historians. I will say that politely. I think there are better people writing, but apparently he can be spellbinding when he talks. Everyone has different opinions. So, and we're looking forward to seeing you, Phil. You may not say that once you've met us, but we'll go on that. So, a Russian Civil War. That's it. Is Beaver's book. So yeah, I'm not a fan of Beaver, but then we don't like everything. But that's it. I'm really going to stop now because it's time to go out. So, tomorrow night's show, 99% certain is going to happen. I will absolutely make sure I do an audio test and visual test with Arthur before the show airs. But I don't know what's happened today. Just sometimes happens. I will reschedule the Bradley show for at some point in the future. But yeah, we had quite good viewers tonight, which is interesting. So thank you for listening to my rambling. And and people are saying they're not a fan of Beaver. I know why you don't like Beaver, Norma. It's getting into Shell Estuary again, isn't it? And that, by the way, that's a good thing that's come out of this, is that now, a year and a half, 2 years into this, I know some of you fools who follow me, and I know the backstories, and I mean that politely, fools. I know a bit about you, Norma, and others watching, and David K, and the other David K, and Phil, and Kevin, and others who are watching this, is that we've got a little community here, and I wouldn't want to see that go either. That little community is I'm very proud of that, and the fact that you meet up with each other socially, some of you, which is really crazy. It's like a mini version of We Have Ways, and people comparing me to We Have Ways, and We Have Ways is doing some amazing stuff, and Jim and Al are friends of mine, and I like them a lot, but they've got a big production. Of course, they're more successful than me. They've got lots of people working at what they're doing, and they've got lots of resources behind them. Gold Hanger Productions is enormous, and they're doing great. I remind you again, folks, I'm just on my Jack Jones doing this. It's just me doing this. So, of course, they're more successful. Shows like this should be regularly scheduled. Yeah, they probably should. Although I'd run out if I did them too frequently, I wouldn't have enough things to say. But anyway, so there we go. I'm going to stop things now. I've said that twice, but I really am stopping now. And a motley crew is indeed what you are, Brad, I think. But there you are. I'll say this now. I'll sign off on this. There's a few of you watching that if I was in a bar, another patron come in, Pat, that was you coming in. Thank you. Is that there's some of you there that if I had to pick people to be beside me in a bar fight, I don't know how good you are at throwing punches, but I'd have you there out of loyalty. Okay, that's the thing. There's people there that if I felt I was in a corner, there's some of you there I would have standing beside me in that moment of peril. So there we are. It's a cool family. And Leslie, Mags, come and get him. He's done. I am done now. I'm spent. I've had enough. I'm going to go and have a beer. So right, there we are. So folks, one more time, thank you very much for your company today. Join us again tomorrow when we talk about the 1st Panzer Corps and the defense of the Bourgaboos Ridge in July in Normandy in 1944. And then after that, Dilip Sarkar's on Thursday talking about his incredible Battle of Britain project. It's going to be much more of an informal chat, probably quite a short show, that one. I may even on Thursday. No, that won't be Thursday. Maybe even the weekend try and reschedule the Bradley show. We'll see how that goes. And then Friday, Kevin Hemel's coming on. If you know Kevin, Willie, always. I'm talking about Willie now. Willie, you're a legend for yeah. You're one of the ones, Willie. Right, I'll say that right now. You're there for every bloody show. You are so pretty much nearly every one. You're one of the ones I'd want beside me in that proverbial pub fight, Willie. You are a legend, and thank you very much for your support. It's been fantastic. So there you are. So yeah, the Kevin Hemel show could end up rambling because me and Kevin get on very well, and I, as I said earlier, I love the Middleton push down in Cobra. It's really exciting, more interesting, I think, than the Seventh Corps. Seventh Corps thing gets all the credit because the Lawton Collins. Eighth Corps Middleton, I think is the one that floats my boat. There we are. I'm ending the broadcast. Cheers, everybody. Have a good day or evening wherever you are. I'm going off. Bye.